Hi, welcome back to Crimson Glass on YouTube. This is the first in a series about revising Broken Girl. So one of the film series I do on my Patreon is walking through the stages of writing, just kind of like weekly updates. And I'm going to continue doing that on Patreon, but I'm going to keep giving them, they get more into the weeds, they get a little bit more spoilery stuff, they get like just more. And in here, it's mostly just a check-in with each stage. I talked about this a little bit with Mad World, I think back in possibly January, but I don't know that I have redone it since I relaunched the site. So let me talk a little bit about what my writing process looks like. It's in basically 3 stages. And these stages are very much influenced by Lonnie Diane Rich at How Story Works from Chipperish Media. So just the way that she has talked about writing, it has helped me to use the same labels. So there are 3 processes. There's discovery, there's drafting, and then there's revising. And then we go from there. So discovery is the first thing I do. It's where you take the premise and you start like fleshing it out into a story. And every writer has their own process on how to do that. And then you have your drafting where you just literally you write the first draft. I call my first draft the alpha draft. If you're taking from the military, alpha, beta, just using that, and then that's just like the messiest draft. Like I don't reread for typos, I just zoom on through. And then we go into revisions where I go into a beta draft and then a posting draft. So for the Broken Girl discovery, that's been going on off and on for about 5 years, ever since I had the idea back in, I'm gonna say probably 2015. When I was getting ready to write for the Broken Girl, I went back into my archives to kind of figure out when I started writing about it. And it looks like the first time I brought it up was the summer of 2015. Although I feel like I think I had the idea earlier, but I don't know that I can't really remember. It's one of those ideas that I think I had pretty early on when I came back to writing, and it just took me a long time to kind of come together to write it. And so off and on, Discovery's been going on pretty much for a couple of years. But this particular draft, I went into full discovery mode in July, August, September, October, somewhere in there. It was kind of like it was an uneven discovery because I was moving from Fool Me Twice, which is kind of a failed draft. We're going to retry that story again in the summer, into Broken Girl, which was my November NaNoWriMo project for 2019. So I was basically in discovery for a large part of October. But at that point, I hadn't quite figured out the story. And when I sat down to write it in November, I wrote it and I won the 50,000 words, but it didn't quite have a draft that I could walk out with. And so instead of being able to give it to you guys in February, they got pushed back to May. And so I went back into Discovery in December. And then in January, I restarted the alpha draft. And with Discovery draft is where I just kind of sat down and really thought about the characters and really thought about what I wanted them to do. And once that happened, I was able to kind of move things around. And then alpha draft, I kind of officially launched it sometime in the first 2 weeks of January. But January was a really kind of a dumpster fire of a month, and things just never got done. I had a rough time at school because I'm a teacher, and coming back from Christmas vacation is super fun. And I just wasn't kind of feeling it. And then we were getting into February, and it still wasn't quite hitting it. I was writing more in February. And then on February 9th, something really weird happened. I just started writing a chapter a day. And then from February 9th till February 29th, in that 20-day period, I wrote 78,000 words. I can't explain it. That happens to me sometimes. Book 1 and 2 of Mad World also went through like similar 3 weeks where I just have 3 weeks of just pushing it, and like the bulk of the story gets done. And then I got sick the first week of March, and then I got sick the second week of March. I had a really terrible cold. It was not the virus that's going around. It was not the coronavirus. But it was just a really bad cold, and I didn't quite bounce back from it because unfortunately, as an adult, you don't get to really sit at home and like just lay for as long as you really need to recover. I was out of work for 2 days, and I had to go right back in. And then just as I started feeling better, I got a second cold, and just as I was feeling a little bit better from that cold, my school shut down. So a lot of things happened before I was really able to get back to my alpha draft. But then I got back to my alpha draft, I revised a couple of things, I changed around their story a lot, and then we finished it. It had 28 chapters, around 146,000 words, and that was on March 29th. And that is the first 2 processes. That's drafting, and then that's discovery, and then drafting. So now we are in revisions. So let's talk about what my revision process looks like. And this is a revision process I have used every time I've been able to finish an entire project to deliver to somebody. So I did this with Mad World Book 1, I also did it with Book 2. So My alpha draft, I let it sit for at least a week. Ideally, I would love to let it sit longer, but I didn't really have the time because it's being published in May. And what I did with it was I did a fresh reread. That's one of the so that's why you let it lay, is so that hopefully it will feel fresher and like almost like new eyes. And then you try to read it all in, not in just one setting, but like just you would read it like a book. And then I started making notes about, well, I really wish I had let this breathe a little bit. I wish I had played this beat, and this thing that I refer to probably should happen on screen, and this character needs more to do here. And so like that's kind of like what you do. And then I made all of my notes, and then I sit down and I look at the structure, and I start to reformat the structure. Where am I adding chapters? Where am I adding scenes? Does the addition of those scenes change the chapter? Do I have to fix and move things around within that chapter? And that's what I'm doing today. So today is April 6th. It is day 3 of revisions. Day 1, I read the first 20 chapters and I made my notes. And then in day 2, I read the final 8 chapters and kind of started summarizing the big ideas. And then this morning, in the middle of emails and whatnot, I started restructuring. And I had known that I was adding 3 chapters after I had finished my reread. Like I knew I was going to add 2 chapters somewhere in the back third, and then I was going to add at least another chapter somewhere else. And then when I started adding in scenes, as I thought, they would change it. And then when I added those scenes, I realized I wanted to pick up and follow those scenes a little bit. So what actually ended up happening is we have 4 brand new chapters, and I think that might end up being, I think we might end up being at 32 chapters. I think that is probably going to be the final. I've added, I think, all of the scenes I'm going to add. I mean, I've added the documents. I haven't written them yet. That's crazy sauce. So today, when I am on break from work, which is, I am on my lunch break now making this video, I'm going to go through in Scrivener, which is Scrivener is my writing program. I'm going to start filling out the inspector, just like the metadata, which is basically whose POV is the story from. Is this scene done? Is it the first draft? Do I still need to do it? I need to label all that stuff so I can find it easily. I want to track location names because of the way I write my chapters. I do, I label each scene where it's being taken place, and I want to make sure that those labels are consistent. So for example, when I set things at Sunny's place, Greystone Manor, I can't remember now if I call it a living room or a study. And I want to make sure it's consistent. So it's like something I track in revisions. And then I want to make sure I'm tracking POVs so that characters like Sam don't disappear long. Like when I was originally starting the story, I thought Sam was going to be a bigger character. And then she wasn't, but she needs to be, like, not a huge character. Like I thought maybe she was going to be a co-protagonist in the story with Elizabeth, but she's not. She's definitely more of a supporting character. But her POV disappears and is taken over by Jason in some spots. And I need those Jason scenes, but I also still need Sam's voice to kind of make the ending work. So I am tracking POV so I can see, well, how long am I going without a POV from Sam? So if I don't have a POV from Sam, can I add one? And Lucky's POV, I didn't add it as much as it needed to be. And Lucky needs to be in there because of the drug storyline. Because of the way the ending of the marriage happens, it needs more with Lucky. So like that's kind of the things that's what I do in revisions, is I go through first thing and I just, it's tedious, it's annoying, but it does help me balance the story, and it helps me really figure out with the labeling, when I label things as scenes and I label things as, and I can do a status report, I can easily find, okay, here's what I still need to write. Here's what I still need to check for typos, because everything is labeled either first draft or to do right now. And then once I revise it, and then once all that metadata stuff is done and I've gone through it and I've added my revision notes, like I need to expand here, I need to do this here, I'm going to hopefully be finished both of those, all of that, like just the nuts and bolts tomorrow. I'm going to give myself today and tomorrow to do that. And then on Wednesday, I'm going to just start writing. And what I'm going to do is just go through the story piece by piece. I'm going to start from the beginning. I'm going to I added a prologue. So in addition to 30, like there's 4 chapters plus a prologue. So if you are on Patreon and you got the alpha draft as part of your $3 pledge, at $5 you would get the beta draft, and the beta draft is after my first read through and I go clean it up and I add all the material. So you're gonna get like at least 100 pages. And then after that I clean it up even more, and then the posting draft goes out, and that's where the ebook and the $7 Patreons get that. So that's the plan for this week, is to get the nitty-gritty structure done, refine the soundtrack, and then go through it starting with the prologue. And if the prologue takes me a day, the prologue takes me a day. and then I'll clean up as many chapters a day as I can do. I think I added a brand new chapter 5, so at some point I have to stop and pretty much just write a new chapter that day, and then go back and keep cleaning up. And then there's a couple of places where I added 2 chapters in a row, so I got a 2. I am really, really thinking I will probably still be okay to do that May 5th publication. Like I said, I will know at the end of this week where I am. Because best case scenario, by Friday, I am through the first 10 chapters. Because I only added 1 chapter in the middle, and then I added a sprinkling of scenes. But I am also juggling Camp NaNoWriMo. Now, NaNoWriMo, I was hoping to do a chapter a day, but like I think that I am not going to kill myself to get the draft finished. It's just a matter of I have to write every day. And I do want to write 75,000 words this month. And I want to do is I want to stretch that. And that's only 2,500 words a day. And I can do that, especially once I'm on spring break next week. And after April 19th, I think most of the big stuff is done. Revisions are hard. Like as soon as when the new version is done and the new material is added, I'm going to send the beta draft out to my peoples. And then they are going to read it and they're going to tell me if the things are still missing. And I'm going to reread it again and see if the things are still missing. And then I think that will give me a better idea. Like I'm pretty sure May 5th is still the date. Like I am like 90% sure. If I got sick, God forbid someone in my family gets sick, something happens. If we end up going back to school on April 20th, which I don't think we will, because I'm a teacher, we're working from home currently. And we are on spring break next week, and then we're scheduled to be back in the building on April 20th. Like we are acting as if, and I hope we are, because I miss my students. I just started the new marking period. I just got brand new 4th graders, and whew, if you've ever tried to homeschool 4th graders, try imagine being their teacher trying to answer their questions. When it's a question that I could answer in 3 seconds in school, but like because of technology and just like lag time because I'm not in front of them, it's a whole thing. So if we end up going back to school April 20th, I don't know. I might have to push out that date. So it's a lot of it's going to, how does my spring break go and how does the pandemic go? I hope for best for everybody, not just because it's good for my production schedule, but it's good for the world if we get this under control and we get to go back to some semblance of living. Like, I'm not going to run out to go to the movie theater. I'm not going to run out and go hang out with people, but I'd like to be back with my students. I think some of them might even miss school. Some, probably not enough, but enough, some. All right, so that is part 1 of revision. So the way this video series is going to work is I am going to come back when the stage is done. So basically, after I finish the nitty-gritty stuff, I'll come back and say, hey, finish the nitty-gritty stuff. We are moving on to the actual editing. And at that point, I think we'll just do weekly updates, just to kind of keep you guys involved in the process. Because this is a process. I don't just write and turn out chapters. I write a whole project and annoy the bejesus out of myself trying to get it to be perfect. Because this is my life's work. Just it's my life's work, fan fiction. It's okay. I'm okay with that. If you have any questions about what I'm revising, what materials I'm adding, like how do I make that decision, where do I just kind of you can ask questions. I'm gonna post. I mean, I can answer them. I don't know if anybody really has any. So, all right, I will see you next time. Bye.